Hello and welcome to Continuing Clockwise, a channel about games, gamers, and gaming. In our last episode, we talked about the prep for my 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign. I laid out what I thought would happen, what was going to be next that the player characters would deal with, and then what was happening in the greater world. With this episode, I'm going to give a quick recap of my prep, tell you what I did, what adjustments I made since last episode, and then go through about what actually happened and what was useful. I highly recommend that you watch last episode first. There's a lot more detail about the campaign there that I'm not going to go into here, but I'll try to keep this self-contained so it all makes sense for you. At the end of the previous session, the player characters had just fled a void dragon's lair with a dragon egg. They had teleported away. One of the player characters was insane. They'd taken, a moderate amount of damage, some more than others. And they'd effectively abandoned the non-player character, an Aarakocra named Rend. So my prep focused on the fate of Rend first, and the bad guy's activities. So what's the dragon doing? There's a mage there that I wanted to plot out what he was up to, how they were going to work together. And then I just started thinking about all the different things that the player characters might do for this session. Just before the session, as I always do, I added a few more details to my prep. I invented a dwarf-like human Thieves Guild boss. I figured since one of the characters is a thief, and a high-level thief at that, and has expressed interest in contacting the guild, that might be something they pursued. And I also decided that boss would be in the possession of the Eye of Vecna. Now that's an artifact level thing. I haven't introduced many of those things in this campaign, but they're level 14. It's time. There's not that much left in the campaign. It's time to go big. And the purpose of that was really just flavor. I thought it would just be really fun and cool. Right before the session, however, one of the players reminded me that I had already given that figure a name, and made him a halfling, and I didn't write that down. I took very poor notes in that previous session, so it just required a small adjustment, and no harm, no foul before that character had appeared or even been mentioned otherwise. Right before the session, I also did some work just to anticipate the improvisation that I would have to do. I knew there were a lot of ways that they might go, so I looked through the Dungeon Master's Guide, for example. There's a lot of great tables for creating non-player characters. And Xanathar's Guide has some great tables for name creation, and that just takes a little of the burden off of me as a dungeon master. I also pulled out the Tomb of Annihilation. One of the things that they may do is go to Rend's home, and Rend lives in Chult, and Chult is the detailed peninsula in that adventure. I also made some very specific notes about the time beats for the Druid's arrival and for Rend's arrival. 3 of the player characters were able to teleport away. The Druid, however, wild-shaped into an elemental form, and Rend presumably was also going to fly. And then I took a few notes right on my notebook, so that's a very standard thing that I do as a dungeon master. And I'll show you here what that looks like. I just make some key notes. What do I want in front of me? What do I need to know? What am I going to lead off with when the game starts? Before I go any further, I want to go through who the main characters are that I'll be talking about. We have Frictor, the dwarvish wizard, and at the start of this, he is lost in transit. He had just teleported much of the party, but frankly, it's a metagame issue because his player was not there, so the character is lost somewhere in the ether. We also have Erinya. Erinya is the tiefling bard who had gone insane during the previous session. And then we have Gimlet, the dwarven rogue. Gimlet was the one who rescued Rend, the Aarakocra. And then Ariana, the elvish druid, who had wild-shaped into an elemental form and was separated from the party but seemed to have things together and was expected to meet them soon. Her player was also missing for the last session. Last but not least, we have Thalia. Thalia is an org fighter. Now in my campaign, I've just reskinned half-orcs and called them orcs as a race of their own. And then to go through the key non-player characters real quick. So first is the Judge, who is the main antagonist for this campaign. He doesn't appear directly in this, but the Judge was the one who sent them on this mission to steal the Void Egg. He's also guilty of summoning demon lords into the realm, tried to summon Tiamat and failed, and is currently trying to summon elemental gods. He's also guilty of attempted dissection of very friendly bird creatures. Speaking of bird creatures, we have Rend, the Aarakocra, who is a non-player character traveling with the group. And last but not least is, let me get this right, it's one of those funny D&D names. Ursinestra is the adult void dragon who is in pursuit of the player characters. So that was all my prep, so now I'm going to tell you what happened. So first, Gimlet, Thalia, Erinya all appeared at the Red Griffin Inn. So that was the inn that they had stayed at in the city of Floridia the previous night and during the previous session. I had let them level up mid-teleport Now, when I do that mid-session without an extended rest attached to it, I let them raise their max hit points, raise their current hit points, but not to heal all the way. They also have available new slots. If they're characters who need to memorize or get their spells through their gods, they don't necessarily have an opportunity to do that. Now, Irinia was suffering from a permanent insanity that would require a greater restoration. During her level up process, she did gain access, I believe it was through her bard skills, to a greater restoration spell. Now, thematically, the way this insanity works is that the character goes through these cycles of catatonia, kind of anger and fury where they're attacking just the nearest characters, and then moments of clarity. So I rolled a few times on that table as they were trying to get her to behave and to do things. Once she had a moment of clarity, I allowed her to cast that greater restoration spell. It turns out that 14th level characters have pretty good access to greater restoration. So, to be honest, that was an element of the prep from last time that really wasn't that necessary. Similarly, I had looked up the grappling rules and had thought through some kind of calming skill check rules that also weren't necessary. They may be later, but for now they weren't. So the group pretty well immediately decided to leave this crowded bar. I had filled it with dwarves who were all kind of drinking and carousing, and they made a beeline out of there. I think a big crowd was just not where they wanted to be. I tried to hook Gimlet into the Thieves Guild, so I had one of the guild's members there, but he really wasn't that interested. I think he was really focused on kind of getting the group out of there and into a more discreet location, which was fine. That was fine. It was just an option that I wanted to lay out. So they found their way. I didn't really anticipate this, so this was all on the fly. They found their way to a halfling inn, and this, again, was created entirely on the fly out of my head. So I just took an inn that I had stayed at in Greece about a year and a half ago, and I patterned it strongly after that. So the layout was based on that. I did have that innkeeper really gouge them, charge them, I think, 30 gold piece per character per night. Again, this was a quiet place. They were looking for a quiet place, and quiet places don't really enjoy adventurers who are just prone to bringing trouble. And it was it's the fun stuff for me because the players really hate the halfling proprietor. Even though she was only a little rude and she gouged them, she didn't really do anything terrible, but they actively dislike her, which is fun. So while Thalia and Irinia slept, Gimlet, who hadn't really been damaged very much in that previous battle, snuck out and went back to the Red Griffin, that original inn, and just waited for his friends. So I whipped up a quick timetable, as I'll show you here, and I just told him hour by hour what was happening. And in the meantime, he actually was up on the roof hiding and listening to the dwarves and kind of seeing, and he got a sense for what they were, that they were all kind of caravan workers. I think he didn't roll particularly well in his perception check, so he didn't get much detail around that. But that gave him a sense for what is happening. It wasn't a festival. Instead, it was more just kind of a rush. It was just a lot of kind of worker people in town. So then on schedule, Ariana appeared. And in this case, because the player wasn't present, I just used the Monster Manual version of a druid. It's a big power difference between a 14th level player character druid and the Monster Manual version. And I really had no regrets around that. I just, for immersion's sake, I had her appear. I don't like using complicated player characters when I'm the DM, or I don't like trying to kind of dual wield those. And then on schedule, Rend appeared. Now, they didn't do a whole lot of kind of interrogation. They were actually very nice. They were very happy, and Rend was very happy to be back with his friends. So kind of so far, all that thinking I had gone through about what happened to Rend has not been used. It probably will next session. So then in the early morning, so it was about maybe 9 or 10 hours after they had arrived, the dragon reappeared. Now, the dragon reappeared over Floridia, the city that they're in, but one advantage of the players having left and gone to a different inn was that the dragon had no idea where they were. He and the mage had scryed on Rend, but really that just showed them that Rend was in an inn, was with some people, with friends, in a city, probably the nearest city, but didn't, neither of them knew exactly. So the dragon was outside just, flying around, searching, and the group gathered their things and quickly snuck off through the city towards the front gate of Floridia. But this is one of the things that frankly stresses me out as a dungeon master, because I had to run this kind of challenge, like how I had to resolve this question of, how to know how effective they are, how sneaky they are. Is the dragon going to find them? What's that look like? Greatly influenced by the 4th edition skill challenge rules is something I keep in mind a lot. And so I just broke it down and just thought, okay, it needs to feel fair. I want to roll some dice, and I want the dice rolls to matter. And really, I want a structure for narrating the story in a situation like this. So that's what I did. I required 3 successes, and I had them do group skill challenges. So all 3 of the players who were present, I had their character had to roll stealth checks, And then those were opposed by the dragon's perception, figuring that the dragon was searching for them. And as long as 2 out of 3 of them exceeded the dragon's roll, they were successful. Meanwhile, as they were sneaking through the city, I was able to narrate the general increasing chaos. The guards were rushing towards the dragon, and a lot of the population were just kind of running around and panicked. It was early morning, and they were successful. They found their way to the gate, and that was where the group really was transfixed on this idea of going to a ballista, finding a ballista. And I think they were thinking that the ballista would be a more effective weapon against the dragon, and they weren't entirely wrong. And I was really glad that I looked through the Dungeon Master's Guide and had that at hand, because that does have rules for ballistas, so I just pulled that out. I did add, however, that the ballista was not in good repair. It had not been maintained, and that the guards were currently trying to make it effective and make it functional. The player characters were able to kind of pitch in and help with that. As you'll see, ballistas require 3 actions to work. So they're designed for a crew. I required twice that, double actions because of the lack of maintenance. They were able to get that fixed pretty quickly. So it went from 6 actions back to the normal 3 actions. I'm still not super clear what the party's motives were. In the previous session, they had trouble with the dragon, and so they fled because they were worried that they would lose the battle. Now they had 2 of their party who were either significantly depowered, like the druid, or just not present, the wizard. So I'm not sure why they fought the dragon or thought that they would really have a good shot at defeating the dragon. But here they were, ready to take it down. So they hid the egg, it's in a portable hole, and set up for another major battle. So it was Ursinestra versus the party, round 2. For this battle, I used almost entirely Theater of the Mind. Now, since 4th edition was my major reintroduction to Dungeons & Dragons after many years, I tend to rely pretty heavily on gridded combat. So I use dungeon tiles sometimes, poster maps sometimes, a lot of times I have a wet erase map. But this case, for a few different reasons, I avoided that. So one was just the scale of it. So we've got this, dragon, it's a city scale, this dragon who's flying. I had her out at like 300 yards away initially. That would just be a pain in the butt to try to draw out. And then pacing-wise, I would have to draw out the wall. I would have to kind of find the minis. I didn't have the minis sorted out. So I just decided to roll it forward and see what happened. Another reason for that was that it was a relatively simple combat. Even though it was big in scale, there was just the dragon and the mage. So the mage went with the dragon. And then relatively few player characters. So we didn't have a lot of running around, not a lot of detailed tactics and angles and things. Now, I thought about using the playmat just not for scale and not using minis to do some sketching, but I was afraid that the players would over-fixate on the scale and the squares. Since they were used to seeing that, that just seems like a natural thing. And I've seen that before in different groups where they'll, if you have something, you tell people to ignore it. It's hard for people to just ignore something. So I just use my sketchbook. And so here I'll go ahead and post that too, just to give them a sense for proportions and positions. So as they were approaching, the battle ensued. I had that mage kind of do some fun things. The mage was able to throw a fireball and some lightning, and actually they shot the mage with that ballista, hurt her pretty bad. And then, the mage frankly didn't last that long, but she was able to do some cool stuff before she went down. And, to be honest, as a dungeon master, and especially new dungeon masters, I would keep this in mind. If your bad guys do a few really cool things before they get killed, that's pretty successful. If they get to kind of show off their stuff, that's a win. So effectively, the dragon was kind of floating in the air. The dragon has hover for fly speed, so just was able to kind of hover at a range that was really optimal for the dragon. The mage had feather falled onto the ground, so the rogue and the druid were able to kind of really take on the mage and finish her off fairly quickly. And then the dragon, kind of was able to did some breath weapons. The guards did not last very long, I think. I think between the mage's one fireball and the breath weapon, they were incinerated. And that was also another quick improv. I knew there was a guard stat block from the monster manual, and I just used that straight up, no modifications there. So as the time for the session was starting to run down, the dragon was really doing pretty well. So Gimlet was driven insane, just like Erinya was previously. The druid, Ariana, was, would have been killed. I'm not going to kill a player character who's not present, so she'll be probably knocked prone or maybe unconscious when the player character returns and feeling much better. But for now, she was killed. And the Thalia was also frightened of the dragon, just the relatively normal fear effect that she had failed to save, but not as badly as Erinya and Gimlet had when they were subjected to it. So as things were getting challenging, the players did begin some discussion with the dragon just wants her egg back, and she's not going to stop at anything until she gets that egg back. That's just pretty plain and simple. The players did convince her that they didn't have the egg, but they had hidden it away somewhere. So that may be an advantage they can use later on. So things are not looking that great for the players. The dragon had barely been scratched. I think it had been hit twice for like 20, actually I'll show you here what my note is. So 20 points of damage. And the players are pretty well on the ropes. And then as they were pondering what to do, whether they should flee, and they were trying to negotiate with this dragon who really was not that interested in negotiation, some metagaming, crept in, and I was really transparent with them. So the reason, Frictor was not there for this battle in the first place was because the player wasn't there. It wasn't really that there was something wrong with the teleport otherwise. So that was clear. Let them know, loud and clear that Ariana would be feeling much better when her player arrives. And that might be enough to tip the scales in their favor. At the very least, it'll make an exit much more reasonable if they do decide to flee. And it was getting time to wrap up the session anyway. So that's where we ended. I feel pretty good about next session. The prep that I had done for the last episode really helped me think through about all these kind of different variables that the players may be encountering. And I feel like most of those variables will be the same for the next session. We'll resolve that battle with the Void Dragon, and then whatever they do, they'll do. So let me know. I would love to hear your feedback. Let me know in the comment section. What do you think of what I did? What would you have done differently? What would you be worried about for the next session for the player characters? What questions do you have? Do you have questions about my process? Do you have questions about the campaign? All those things. I would love to hear what's on your mind. Stay tuned next week for my next episode, and until then, happy gaming. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button and please consider subscribing.